Today my diary is going to be about doing a karate weapon known as bong or bow. Generally for this project I tend to use hardwood. I made them with oak, beech, ash or sapele. This is what I have available. I'm sure that there are other woods that are also very suitable or even more appropriate. So for this project I'm going to use a leftover piece of sapele which I had from making a furniture, and I think it's going to be a really lovely wood. I just need to join it and obviously rip it in half and get on with it. So now just joining the four sides. I have already done two, they're square with one another, and now just making sure that the other two are square to each other and parallel to the one that I have just done. Quite a bit of a gap. Just found the center, now drawing the circle. So following marking the circle, I took the distance that go from the center to the corner there, and then placed the compass or dividers in here and marked there and there. So from a square this one will become a octagonal shape. In order to help me with this project I made this holder, which is basically a piece of just simple pallet pine cut in half along the diagonal and glued on just another piece of timber, still pine, and this one will hold the actual blank. I can then plane it across the whole length and go in and match the two little marks I have put in here, so it gives me an idea of how far down in order to maintain a circular shape. I'm going to start with the jointer and I'm going to go from here downwards and then turn it around and here backwards. Done the first side. I'm quite close to the actual mark, so now I'm going to turn it around and do the other side. So what I'm looking for is a consistency within the width of this line, and then obviously the other side is going to be roughly the same, so trying to make the octagonal shape. I swapped to my scrap plane so I can actually deal with removing quite a lot of material in one go. So let's see. So this is the end result, kind of an octagonal shape. Some of the sides are slightly bigger than the other one that I haven't touched. So now I'm going to finesse them with my 5.5. So quite low shaving. I'm out. The difference is about 0.7 of a millimeter, so I can actually see it if I twist it around there. That's the highest point. So I'm going to take a couple of shavings off here. rotating 180 degrees. I find it useful to put my thumb on the surface that I'm interested. Thank you. Pretty happy with it. Looks quite, surfaces are quite parallel, given the fact that I've done it just by eye. I'm very pleased with that. Just a thought that came to mind. I actually wouldn't mind having a bong that is heptagonal. So maybe I'm going to go back to the student and ask if he would prefer it, if this would be shaped like this. I showed the picture of the octagonal bong staff to one of the students and they like it as it is. So in the meantime I made another one. This is in oak, still left over from a table I've made, and now I got this to the same stage as the other one was. And what I thought doing, there are different ways of doing this. Personally, I prefer to use planes, so I'm going to use a plane to smooth each of the corner, keep rotating it. What I'm looking for in here is that distance will go halfway this face and the adjacent one, so I know I'm roughly halfway. I'm not yet trying to make it round as yet. I'm just dividing the 8th. I'm adding 8 new half faces. So now the other side. Now from the original markings is virtually left only with the circle, so is pretty much rounded up, is pretty good. Obviously you can feel slight set of ridges, and what I'm going to do now, I'm obviously going to taper the ends and make them slightly thinner. What I've done, I traced a cross here, so I'm going to start from here, do short pass, longer pass, longer pass, longer pass up until I want the chamfer to start, the taper, and then switch side and do the 4, and then obviously do in the middle. Basically pretty much exactly as I've done the whole thing. So this will be roughly the position. Come in here, so say 60 to 60, perfect. So that's 9.9 and 60. This way. So I'm going to put the mark here on top, perpendicular in here, and scrap line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm rotating 180 degrees, just right at the bottom, and repeat 8 times in total. Now right perpendicular, that's perfect. So I put a clamp in order not to rotate it, because obviously it doesn't have any more faces. So, and now I'm going to use the edges again to go to the halfway. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 180 degrees. Exactly the same procedure that I've done to make that. What I'll do, I'll smooth it right away. So I'm going to do this by eye with my block line. So having left the cross and also the center point, I can now see which areas may need a little bit of a tweaking. So I now grab my wooden spoke shave, look down the flute of it, and just really finesse. For example, that I think is about 0.5 millimeter. There you are, that's done. Kind of a circle. I really like this method. It's quite methodical, and more importantly is reproducible. So it's something that good day, bad day, yeah, is variation isn't huge. So so this is the end result. I think it looks pretty good. Still got a few ridges here and there. I can just see this in the shadow. So what I do now is I take a card scraper, and then still need to be very careful with the grain orientation, because this is oak and this is actually quite close of the grain surfacing. For example, here you can see this ridge there, and I run it through and the ridge just disappears. It's really nice and simple. So I took a piece of ash, put a hole, and what I do is wrap it around with some sandpaper, and really simple, and go over it to smooth it out. I don't like to use sandpaper because it's a waste, it's a consumable, so I don't think my footprint is very high. However, I prefer not to use it. So that's the reason why I mainly use a scraper. Now what I'm doing, I'm just going through each side of the bong and feeling if there is like a little groove, looking at the grain orientation, and then just ease off like that. The technique that I use is one on the high side, then twist it a bit, and then do both sides of that, then another one side. So basically I'm trying to develop a perfect curve. So now for the engraving. That, and then a long one across, and a couple of times I got caught out as I made it too thin. So it's obviously quite time consuming, but really satisfying. So you're pushing, this hands wiggles and pushes forward, this hands is the choker. Height, direction, but this is the main one for direction, and this one pushes back in order not to kind of skew it all the way, and then you refine it. That's it. That's done. So now I'm going to fill it with wax. So I'm just going to warm it up, and then it's just a question of rubbing it. So I warm it and then press. I really don't want to use epoxy unless it will keep coming off during practice. I do a cross, then twist it, then go across the horizontal one. So once all of this is filled, I'll heat it up a bit. So now that is all filled. There are different ways of doing this. You can take some wool and just go across it and buff it off. If it's quite a lot, you can take a scraper, and I try not to use sandpaper, is because the dust the sawdust that is generated is going to end up in the wax, and it just doesn't look very nice. Now the coats of boiling linseed oil have dried and feels really good. Just the last coat of wax, and then following that we'll be burnishing it with wood chips. The beeswax is from a friend of mine just around the corner, and what I really like, once again, is very low footprint, and everything goes also to support bees at the same time, so pretty cool. The wax has been left to dry. It's now quite tacky, so just taking shavings and burnishing it. Most of these will be the shaving I actually got out of this very wood, and now you see the wood really pops out, and the engraving just starts to blend a bit more, give like a sense of used. And this is the final result. You can see how the wood is really highlighted by the actual finishing. See all the edges. That looks really lovely. So here we go. This is how I make my bongs stuff for my karate students.